Hello, everyone. It's my, yeah, I think it's okay. It is my honor to welcome our distinguished guest, Professor Scott Rozelle from Stanford. And yes, in a minute, I'm going to introduce the Professor Rozelle and our event. But before that, I would give the screen to our director, Jürgen Ritter, Mr. Ritter from Germany.
Thank you. I hope everybody can hear me. Yeah. To Beijing from Germany. I'm very sorry that I cannot be with you today. I fly to Beijing only on the weekend. But first of all, now a very warm welcome to Professor Rozelle. It's a pleasure to see you online at least. Since not everybody knows the Sino-German Agriculture Center, we said within half a minute or so, I would give an introduction. Our center has been established in 2015 by the two ministries of agriculture in Germany and China. And we are already in our third phase now, which means that the project obviously receives a lot of support from both ministries, and we are quite happy to move forward also with that kind of support. Now, of course, a project like this works with different formats, with study visits, with workshops, webinars, etc. And we have, of course, also our annual topics. But in addition to these topics, we created a new format, which is called the DCZ Talks, which gives us the opportunity to address important issues or current affairs, etc., or like today, invite important guests like Professor Rozelle. So I'm very glad that this could be organized, and a big thank you to Ahmadjan Rozu, who not only wrote a book review on Invisible China, but also then established a contact with Professor Rozelle and made today's meeting possible. So I'm looking forward to the presentation and to the discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Now I invite our managing director from Chinese side, Mr. Wang Gen.
Good afternoon, Mr. Professor Rozelle and all participants, Mr. Jürgen, and hello. I'm Wang Gen from the IPCC of the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs. As I'm acting as the manager director from China side for this DCZ project. As Jürgen's introduction, this is our third phase of the implementation for this project, and DCZ is a cooperation platform between German and the Chinese government in agriculture area. And in the past 10 years, we have implement policy dialogue, knowledge sharing, and some business partnership establishment, and so on. But we believe that your knowledge and your lessons in international development area is the most important to enhance the DCZ's development in the future. So we are looking forward to share with you professional knowledge and lessons. Thank you very much.
Yes. Sorry. Okay. So I will give a brief introduction to our events and also Professor Rozelle. And first, let me introduce Professor Rozelle. Our distinguished guest, Professor Rozelle, is from Stanford University, and of course, he needs no introduction. People who follow agriculture and rural development in China. He has written many books and articles, and right now he is a Helen F. Farnworth Senior Fellow and co-director of Stanford Center on China's Economy and Institution, and he earned his PhD from Cornell University. And he is currently a member of several organizations, including American Economics Association, International Association for Agricultural Economists, and Association for Asian Studies. His research, focused almost exclusively on China, is concerned with agricultural policy, including supply and demand, trade and agricultural projects. So his papers has been published in top academic journals, including Science, Nature, and American Economic Review and Journal of Economic Literature. He is fluent in Chinese and has been conducting research, I believe, for 40 years, right?
More than 40.
More than 40.
I don't like to say that.
Yes, yeah. Well, that's even I was born. So, and for the past 20 years, he also has been chair of the International Advisory Board of Center for Chinese Agricultural Policy. And in recognition of his work in 2008, he was awarded a Friendship Award by then Chinese Prime Minister Wen Jiabao. And yes, I'm really glad that you are here. And this event came from the book review I did for Over Magazine in 2022, and then I shared with Professor Rozelle and invited him to our center to speak for us. And then because of his schedule, and finally we made it today, so I'm really glad.
Good. Well, it's nice to be here. We've been communicating for almost not a year. We made it within the year. And I mean, the thing is coming back to China after 3.5 years of COVID, there is lots of things to catch up with. So, but it's my pleasure to be here today and to meet students and friends of friends. I mean, we've worked with RCRE and MOA and all these groups many times. It's very good to be here. So I was listening to what everybody says, you know, because of the Ministry of Agriculture and you know, Sino, right? We have Sino, yeah. And so this is going to be really about Nongmin and Nongchun. And no, I think I'm an economist and I'm interested in China's development and the role that rural people play in that. And I'm going to give 2 talks. The first part, Home has never heard. It's brand new. We've done it with Dan Li out at Xinan Caida. And I think it's very, very important. We're still, so I want everybody here to give me feedback. We want to make this public and important, but we don't want people to get angry at us. I mean, I don't care, right? I'm an old professor, but no, we think it's very important, and it's sort of the results of the next part, which is you know, how we get human capital in China rising. Okay. Okay, so there's a very famous set of papers, chapters of books written by Marty White. He's a professor at Harvard. He's actually retired now. He's professor emeritus, but he's doing this project with us. He wrote this paper called The Myth of the Social Volcano. And he's a sociologist. So he was worried about rising inequality. The United States have very high inequality, right? We know the problems of inequality. And so, but this was back in 2000. He was started to worry about it. And so in 2004, 2009, 2014, he did 3 national surveys on this. And basically, he went to people, and you'll see the answers. He says, do you know that there's high inequality in China? And the person he's wiping the window of a BMW, and he says, that's not my car. Right? He says, I know there's high inequality. Okay. And Then they find out their income and he says, why are you poor? Okay, and they gave him 10 choices. Number one reason they're poor is I'm not capable. Number two, my education isn't high enough. Number three, I don't work hard enough. Those are the first 04, 09 to 2014. Number 8 was there aren't equal opportunities in China. So almost, and then no one picked the Chinese economy is unfair. No one picked it. That was number 10. Okay. So it's basically their own human capital. And then he asked, why don't you care about inequality? And almost everyone, and you'll see the numbers, almost everyone said, that's because I'm better off today than I was 5 years ago. And almost everyone said, I'm going to be better off 5 years from now than I am today. So they're getting, so my education is too low. I don't have as much money as those guys out there, but I'm getting better and better. Okay. And so that's why it's called the myth of the soul. There is no social volcano, right? That people are happy. People are optimistic about the future. We redid this survey in 2023, so about 8 months ago. And the answers were so different. Marty, who's part of it, it was exact same questions, okay? We did it with Shinan Taida, and it was national representative, and it was so much. Marty said, no one will believe us. So we redid it in October and December. We did it 3 times, and we basically got the same answer all 3 times. So this is, and so Marty, this is Marty, this isn't Scott. Marty says, is the volcano going to erupt? Now, I don't like that. I say, Gongtong Fuyu, we need prominent prosperity more than ever, right? That's what I want to call this a work right here. So here it is. Why are you poor? Okay. And look at this. Remember what I just said? In 04, 09, 2014, it's the first reason. Today, it's number 7. Okay. So just basically, even if I worked hard, even if I can't get rich. And low education went from 2 to 6. Even if I have high education, I can't get rich. And then look at this, unequal opportunity, right? It's now the number 1 reason people these are 90% are rural people, are rural hukou. And they say it's unequal opportunity now. And number 2 is the economic, look at this, in 2014, the last one was unfair economic system. Today it's number 2. I can't, this is an unfair system that I'm in. It's gone from human capital to systematic reasons. And I think that we need to worry about that. Now, this is what we said. China has gone 40 years with no recessions. It's grown for 40 years. Yeah, there was 1990 and there was 2050, these little tiny recessions, but then immediately back. So this is COVID, right? This is Janet Yellen not being listened to. Okay, we need to listen to Janet. Is my colleague at the University of California, Berkeley, right across the bay. And I've talked to Janet about China, and she wants to get relations with China going better. She has to give the party line over here, right? But so I think it's all these things, and China is really in its first recession in a long ever that most people can remember. And so I think that if the economy starts to go up again, I think that they'll change right back to optimistic again. But what you're going to see here is, and then we ask, why are you rich? I'm less interested in this, but it's basically the same idea. Ability, and I'm rich. I'm rich because okay, I'm rich because I have talent, and now it's dropped to number 4. Okay, And then it was hard work was number 2, but hard work is way down. So you can see it's the same idea, right? High education went from number 2 in 2004 to number 9 today. So and connections are number 1. You have to have connections in this. These are what rich people are telling us. Okay, so again, I don't know rich people. I just know farmers. But that's unfair economic system. You can see way up. Okay, so here's optimism or pessimism about the future. And what I did, I tried to summarize it. We basically said the opportunity for people to succeed is the same for everyone. Okay, and then what we said is, I strongly disagree, I disagree, I'm neutral, I agree, I strongly agree. And so what I took was strongly agree, and what you see is the big fall there's only 15% of the people that now say, I agree that the opportunity for same to succeed is for everyone, right? That's why unequal opportunity is up there. Look at this. Effort is always rewarded. It went from 2/3 to less than to about 1/4. I mean, that's the biggest fall right there. So whether people come rich is their own responsibility, and you can see that's fallen significantly. And so it's that people are more pessimistic out there, and I think that's what we need to sort of work on, is how we turn around and retain the optimism. And okay, so here we go. How do you feel about your current? This is good 5 years before, remember? And so much better off. 71% of people think they were going to be much better off. It's now down to 40%, right? And much worse off is way up. Nobody thought they're going to be worse off, but now 1/4 of the people think they're going to get worse and worse over time. Thinking about 5 years, this is 5 years from now. So it's very interesting is they think 47% of things, yeah, I think I'm going to get better than now. So I like that. It's almost half. It's down from 2/3, right? But this is what it better. This is about people around you. So let's go back here. So 71% of people thought that they used to going to be better off, and only 40% now. But look at this. I think 81% of the people, are going to be much better off. And now only 2% of the people, around. Now it's 22%. So you can just see the pessimism that's gone here, and that's really what we want to see, is to say we need to get to we don't have the why, right? I mean, we know what the why is. We just did a survey of 700 villages, 1 person per village, and they were the parent of a project that we had worked in school. So we did a school project, and the parent was in there, and we used these 700 villages during COVID. So Professor E was stuck in her hometown in a village in Hubei. These were, we did the survey of the 7 counties around Hubei, and we were saying, how are you doing? And I'm so tired of writing papers on COVID. We don't want, but we used the same sample, and it's almost exactly a year ago. It was the end of April 2023, and they had just come out. Beida had just come out and said, by 22% of 16 to 24-year-olds were unemployed. And these were urban people, right? You remember, rural people can't be unemployed, right? There's no unemployment, because if they get unemployed, they go back to the farm. 85% of 35-year-old rural hukou holders and below have never worked a day of their life on the farm. But they say, you can go back to the farm. You aren't unemployed. And they say, yeah, okay. But so 22% of 16 to 24-year-old urban people, do the math, it's about 12 million people. In April 2023, 42% of households did not have a job from Nongchun, okay? It gets better, but 42% of 600 million is about 250 million people didn't have a job last April. Nobody wrote a story about it, right? Okay, we redid the survey in August. We redid the survey in August, and almost everyone was back to work. So it was about 90%. And the people who weren't going back were basically, a lot of women were staying home with their kids, okay? Which is another whole issue. But most of them were back to work. But they were working about 40% less than before. The number of days was way down. Because they're working, many of them were trading jobs, so Meituan, right? And I work Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you work Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and the number of days was way down, and so their incomes are down, right? That's so what we say is, yeah, I think that if the economy gets back on growing, this pessimism is gonna go away, and I think optimism is gonna come back. But I think we need to say, if the economy, we need to watch this. Is this pessimism gonna stay in? And from my book, as China continues to move to new productive forces, we want to put in new productive forces, new productive quality forces, right? Which means robots and AI and automation, and China wants to go, right? What are 500 million rural people who have never been to high school going to do in that economy? Are they going to be pessimistic, right? And so that's basically what what this says. We can go back and talk about that. Again, this is brand new. I'm showing it to people now, and I'd love to have feedback. Of course, like I say, the rest of the talk, I'll try to get through this in about 20 minutes. Is that okay? Okay. And I want to talk about China's low level of human capital, a rural problem, and rural education in China. What are the problems the government's going to do about it? I'm going to tell you right now, China's government figures out a problem, they do something about it. The whole world thinks China is spectacular in that way, okay? Then I'm going to tell you about the real problem that we're just finding out, which Hong Mei has worked on, and that our group in Beida has worked on, which is babies, which is in Renju Nongli. And the whole the problem is it hasn't been a problem in the past, right? That it's going to become a problem, I think, as China moves from middle income to high income. And I'll talk a little about that in a second, okay? So here we go. Will China's future workforce be capable of supporting productivity growth and wages? Last weekend, we went to Zhouping in Shandong, and it was not this factory, we went to a textile factory. I went to that textile factory 15 years ago, and there were 5,600 Nomingong, rural workers there. Okay, it's a very large textile factory. Today, there's 220 workers in the whole factory. Their output is doubled, and every one of those workers has a computer science degree from Shandong University. It's all automated with German technology. All the equipment is imported from Germany, right? And they don't need, they need 50 Nomingong to sweep the floor and cook and wash the windows, right? And that kind of thing. So yeah, so that, and so China has 8 million people in college, but there's 8 million people I'm sorry, there's 580 million people in the whole labor force that have never, ever been to one day of high school. And I always say, why do you want to go to high school? This is an OECD measure, right? The OECD says in a high-income economy, in high school, you learn math and science and language and computers. And in a high-income economy, 80 to 90% of the jobs require math or science or computers or language, right? And ability to repair my car. I don't know. I had the same guy, Manuel from Mexico, repair my car for 20 years, and then suddenly he disappeared. And I said, "Where's Manuel go?" He couldn't repair cars anymore because it's all done by computers. And he didn't know math and science, and he lost his job. And the guy who did it is applied computer science major from the community college. He now repairs cars. And so this is what. So where is China in terms of stuff? This is 2010. I'm gonna update this. 2010 census data. Only 24% of China had ever been to high school. Okay, and that includes urban and rural. Okay, look at this in 2010. These countries, these are middle income trapped countries. You're not supposed to say middle income trapped in China, right? Exactly. Well, China hasn't hit the middle income trap. They're still rising. They've never come down and sunk in there. But Turkey, Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, for 70 years, they've been middle income. They go up and down and up and down and up and down. And you can see that one of the reasons their middle income is their labor force is very under educated. But they're all more highly educated than China's labor force in 2010. In 2010, okay? And this is not an urban problem. 90% of urban people go to high school or college. It's a rural problem, right? So it's basically, and this is 2013. So the basic question is this poor level of human capital going to be a barrier to China's challenge to grow and become a high-income country? Why aren't people going to high school, right? Why are these? Is there a solutions problem? Okay, so let's talk about rural education and what are the problems. Here's a survey I did with the World Bank in 2005. This is when we first started working on Nongchun Jiaoyu, and we went, and this is 20,000 kids, 4th grade. Okay, the urban students were testing at 5th grade level. And the rural students were testing at 3rd grade level. So by 4th grade, they were already 2 years behind. Okay, and this is by Prashant Loyoka. He was a professor at Beida, and now he's a professor at Stanford. And this gap gets wider and wider as you go over time. Okay, so why? Okay, so remember that mountain back there? That's the mountain. So this was a first school in Sichuan, by the way, okay, that I went to when I started studying. And the rural schools were so bad, right? They used to have one light bulb there, and the light bulb was always burnt out. So I used to take light bulbs in my backpack, and I'd unscrew it, and they'd clap for me, and you'd have 3 kids to a desk, 3 no books, no problem, because Mayo Lao sure did no teacher, because Qin Gongzi at that time. Remember all wages, all salaries were paid by the local government. Okay, today it's very, very different. Look at the schools in rural China now. Look at it. See that mountain back there? That's the same mountain. And then look at that. I mean, we're from Stanford University is in Silicon Valley, and we're in Palo Alto, the center of Silicon Valley. Our schools are the best schools in America. and they don't look like this. These are more beautiful than Palo Alto School. And there's teachers now. They're paid by the central government, right? And boy, do they have books, lots and lots and lots of books, okay? So, and then we redid, after all this, we redid this test and look at, yes, the rural students came up a little, but the urban students went up a little, right? And it was still this big gap. So for the next 5 years, as Hongmei knows, we really started working on, maybe it's the students, maybe the students have a problem, right? Maybe their nutrition and health is not good. So look at all these studies that we did, you know, 2 or 3 of them are with Ministry of Agriculture. Thank you very much. So, and what we did is we went to 19 data sets in 10 provinces, and we did 3 things. We took a blood drop and said, do they have pingshe? Do they have anemia? We took a sample from the bathroom and we checked, do they have jishengchong? Do they have intestinal worms? And then we gave them eye tests, and we said, you know, can they see well? You know, I have myopia, but oh, my myopia is gone. These are kids who are nearsighted without glasses, okay? And those are 3 conditions. And 133,000 kids we tested in those problems. And look at this. You can't. 60 to 65% of rural kids were sick with a disease, with a condition that affected 你怎么样学习, right? Oh, no wonder, right? Now, today, when Liu Yandong and Wen Jiabao and Hu Jintao found out about this, they launched the Yin Yang Zhongcan with 26 million children. That was in 2013. Today it's 3,900,000. It's, you take all the kids in the entire world who get a nutritious lunch at school, and China has twice as many in Zhongguo Nongcun. And look what happened. The anemia rates went from 45% to 5%. That's lower than the United States. So China's rural China has lower anemia than the United States. And I mean, that when China's government figures this out, and there's projects on glasses and jishengchong and computer assisted learning. And look at that, there's still a gap. Why? I mean, all that. So we fixed the teachers and the schools and the kids. And, you know, and this is 2015. Hey, it went from 4% to 30%. So the amount of kids that are going to high school is going up for sure. Okay. I just saw, because of COVID, we couldn't see the early Nianpucha, but we just saw it. It's now 34%. So it's now, so it's going up for sure, right? But it's still one of the lowest countries in the world. Turkey is now 35%. So China 1 percentage point behind Turkey, okay? And look at this. I mean, this is 2015. You know, this is the share of your labor force. This is your whole labor force. Remember, this is 18岁到65岁, right? This is the share of the labor force that's been to high school. And China is last, 最后一名, okay? And if only 30% of those are 34% now, this means that 66% have never attended high school at all, and they don't know that, right? I talked about that, right? They don't have those skills. And so I should say one thing, first of all, 你从贫困到中等收入, going from poor 1980 to 2019, okay? It's a miracle, right? But the workers, they go all day, right? That you don't need to know math. You don't need to know science, right? It's when you go from middle income to high income, which is the problem. So, and I always say, you know, does Scott only know about this? Does does the Chinese government, does Zhao Yubu not know about it? I mean, look what Zhao Yubu has done in the past 10 years. They added 10 million new slots in high school. Okay, and look at that. 70% of rural kids now go to high school. 原来 the 目标 was early年 now 100%, but then COVID hit, and now I think they're going to try again by 2027 or something like that. They're going to try to get everyone. You know, by the way, Germany has the highest level for the whole country, the highest share of its population that's been in high school. It's 92%. So urban China is better than Germany. Yeah, exactly. The United States, if you look at this data, it says 90%. But the fact is, it's really 80%. About 20% of high school kids drop out. What happens is, within 10 years, they go back and 考试. It's called a GED test. And what they've shown is 这个 GED test 没用. They act like a high school dropout. So in life. And in the United States, if you're a high school dropout, okay, in jail, on drugs, sick, disability, on welfare, 5 times more probability than having a middle income life. I mean, there's our problem right there, right? And it's 20% of our population, right? And it's a huge problem. And the same problem is in the UK. France it's a little better in France. Germany's much better. So it's still a problem. If those 7% of the people that don't graduate from high school don't do well in Germany. But it's a small share. So okay. So the bad news is, in the past, rural China had quite big problems. The good news is, when the government recognizes a problem, it acts. Okay. There's still many challenges. Professor E here has done very influential work on 职业高中, and we need to improve that. But as I'm gonna show you, I think it's not the school problem, it's the problem with the kids and that go there. Okay. Even more investment in human capital is learning. Many children aren't learning even when they get into junior high school. And here's the big set. Is it possible they can't learn? Okay. They just need science and math and language and computers. They can't learn. Is that possible? So that brings us to this new field called babynomics. Okay. Jim Heckman, Jim has been to with Lu Mai and RCOD many times, and we learned this from Jim. And so the real problem is this. So we went out in 2016 to 100所那个中学, 农村中学 in Shanxi and Gansu, and we tested their 认知能力, okay, their cognition ability, and we gave them a math test, okay, and look what happened is over 50% of the kids had a delay in development, that their brain didn't develop, their 认知能力 was low, okay, and guess what? When it's low, okay, this is 认知能力 D, okay, to the left here, and these are math scores. Look, why don't they learn math? It's because they have poor development skills, okay? And then with Zhongnongda, somebody's from Zhongnongda. Yes, exactly, yes. This is with Xinxian and Su Baozhong and Zhao Qiran. And then one of Hong Mei's colleagues, Wang Xiaobing, we went to 400 schools, and we found out that 41% of 农村小学生 had delay problems. And if you were in California schools, these kids would have 特教, they would have special education, is that people would help them learn math and help them learn science and help them learn computers one-on-one. It's very expensive. It's about 40% of the California education budget for 15% of the kids, right? Obviously, 中国农村 doesn't have special ed, right? And because it wasn't a problem before. But look at even in 小学 that they can't learn arithmetic, they aren't learning writing, or they're learning it slower. Okay, so here we go. In Chinese schools, where upper curriculum, it's very, very fast. If you have low levels of cognition, maybe they can't learn or learn very slowly. Okay, and this is Heckman here. Yeah, this is Heckman right here. And what we see is that 三岁看老, this is Tang Chao. They were really smart then, exactly. And look at this. This is 我3岁考你的认知能力，你就不用考高考。You just take a test at 3 years old, and I can tell you what your 高考 is going to be, your college entrance exam. That's now, it's not, this is for the average, right? People go that way and people go up, but it's that by 3 years old, your cognitive ability is 80 to 90% done. And by 5 years old, it's 100% done. You cannot improve your cognition anymore. You learn a lot of other things after 5 years old, but that's when your cognition is done. Okay. And so this is last. This will take about 5 minutes. This is a paper we wrote in BMJ Global Health 2 years ago. We wrote it with 28 other 中国的 co-authors. And these are everybody who did 农村领导3岁早期教育的工作. Okay, everyone. And so they're Wei Jianwei, Shanghai Jiaoda, Beijing Dashi, Yi Xueyuan. And what we did in this paper is we looked at 12 papers that looked at 领导3岁的发展, the development, 认知能力. Okay, and there were 10 provinces, 18,000 observations. There they are, right, all over the country. And look at this. 65% have a delay at 3 years old. Okay, 65%. And let me tell you, I mean, and you know, Hongmei knows this, is you go and you talk to them and say, they have a 6-month-old baby. What's your educational aspiration for your baby? 95% of moms say, I want my baby to go to college. Then by junior high, 他们辍学就走. Because then you'd ask them, do you read a book to your kid? And they go, well, I didn't hear you. I think you asked me, do I read a book to my kid? Of course I don't read a book. They're only 1 year old. They'll learn to read when they're in school, right? And then we teach them, you're going to see, we teach them how to read to their kid, to talk to their kid, to play with their kid. And after 1 month, you go, do you read to your kid? And they go, yeah, it's like, you know, it's like I'm a little embarrassed, and my mother-in-law is scolding me for wasting my time, right? Yeah, that happens a lot. Okay, 6 months, after 6 months of training, one lesson a week. Do you read to your baby? Yes. How much? 4 hours a day. Wow. I know, exactly. And they're all full-time moms. I mean, and I have the smartest baby in the whole village. And that's what happens here. And you can see that there's a new Shanghai Jiaoda a paper here that just came out for Chongmingdao, and Chongmingdao's delay is higher than Central and Western China. Okay, so what's the source of the delay? It's just what I said. They're not reading to their babies. Only 80% of the families don't read to their kids. 80% don't tell stories. 80% don't sing. Over half the kids have 0 interactions, so psychostimulation with their baby. Because 5,000年 for 5,000 years, 他们在养农民. They're raising farmers, and they're don't die, be healthy, be strong. That's how you raise a baby. But now you have to stimulate them like that. Okay, and so here's 10 studies. 大规模的实验. And basically there's a curriculum once a week. Okay, And there's 2 toys a week, okay? And there's the curriculum right there. And you actually train the parent. It's the trainer's not training the baby, they're training the parent how to interact with the kid. And then you give them 2 toys and you give them a book for a week. And then they're supposed to play with their kid. And then the next week you come, you take those 2 toys away and give them 2 new toys. And then you teach them how to use these 2 new toys. And they're teaching grandma, they're teaching mom, and here are the 10 studies. So 500 parents got trained and 500 parents didn't get trained. And 1 year later, let's go check their babies. And what you can see, yeah, this is it. This is done. And it's 0.23%. Every single study had an impact. And the other thing you can see is it's because they invest more and because the parents' knowledge went up. What are the lessons? Last slide. China has a serious human capital challenge. I think it's like 贫血, or I think it's like, the schools are too bad and they don't have teachers. That if the government figures out that this is a real problem, that they're going to invest. But I think that, that's our challenge today. There are many, we go out to the Zhongguo Nongcun now, to the Xincheng, and we talk to the leaders and we say, this is really important. They go, everything is important this day and we don't have any money. So there's a challenge here. And I think that, China has to start now, especially now the number of babies are going down. Well, you better bet the quality up, right? 现在72%, 72% of babies have a 农村户口 this year. Yeah. And so, okay.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
A little over.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was a very intellectually stimulating presentation, and thank you for sharing your latest studies and observations. So, of course, I have several questions regarding the content of your presentation today, but I would like to start with the personal story. So you have been in China for like 40 plus years, right? Mm-hmm. So you have been observing the villages, rural developments, and farmers, etc. So in your experience, so you witnessed the evolution of the rural areas in China. So my question is, what has been struck you the most, and can you share some stories that you learned along the way, and what is it like to experience whole transformation?
That's a big question. Exactly. No, I mean, I think what I've really been able to see, I came in 1981 as a master's student, I was from Cornell agriculture economics, and Cornell agriculture economics professor in Sanxinendai in 1930 started Jingning Daxue, which is now Nanjing Agriculture University. And so right after China and US got together, Nanjing Nongye Xueyuan, it wasn't even Daxue at that time, invited Cornell to come and teach a class. And my professor said, I'll only go if Scott goes with me. and of course, we went to Nanjing, and Jiangsu was the last province to do Shenzhen Zhourenzhi, to do household responsibility system. And so we went out to the communes, and the commune leader said, we're never going to do Shenzhen Zhourenzhi, the communes work too well. And of course, our first papers that I write with Hong Mei's boss, Huang Jikun, is we look at the impact of the household responsibility system on China's agriculture. And so the story is that it's my research agenda has changed so much. It's because China has changed so much. So we started on, pure agriculture and how people incentives matter. And then it was getting more inputs. nitrogen and fertilizer, because, in 1981, there was almost no fertilizer for anyone. And so that, and
So
they went.
you are discovering some new phenomena and
Yeah.
you were adjusting your approaches and methods constantly, right?
Yep. So it went from agriculture to then off-farm work and Shangjung Chie and Township Village Enterprises. And then it went, and then what I saw was agriculture as part of GDP is going down. And that's when I turned and said, oh, maybe we should worry about the human capital of the labor force. And as you know,
And
everyone
taxes
knows.
were-
Yeah, I drove up. Yep. So it was a huge change. The other thing that I like to say is what the 1980s. So I've been here 5 decades, right? 1980s. It was. I didn't know what was going on out there, and when people out there looked at me, they didn't know what I was. This was okay in the 1990s. I was teaching everyone how to do research. I went with Doing to the field, and he'd never done a survey before. I taught Doing how to do a survey, right? Exactly. He did a lot of them after.
Have you used our fixed survey
Sure,
system?
无丁观察点, yes, definitely. It's a fair.
Your survey is selected from this fixed survey system.
No,
No.
no. But we've had many people write paper. Many of my students have written papers with it. Yeah, no, it's a great data set. It's a fantastic data set, right?
But just you said you compare the different years to do this survey. But you select the fixed investigation center, not change
Real panel,
Who's that?
real panel data.
a real panel.
What, your data or our data?
No, your data is a real panel.
Never, no, what we do is, economists are, you're an ecologist, but if you know anything about economists, we need to have causality, that this causes that, right? And then you could publish an economic journal. So we do 大规模的实验. Okay, the problem is, but what we do is we'll do for 那个贫血, right? And then we did it in Shanxi, and then we did it in Ningxia, and then we did it in Gansu. And it was the same problem everywhere. And then we went to.
But why did you select this province and not the other province?
Well, you have to select, you.
Just this, they are a poor progress or not rich.
So our selection, yeah, our selection is we always chose rural counties that were all Hanzu,
Okay.
that were all Hanzu woman. So Lu Mai picks a lot of Shaoshu Minzu, right? We work in Hanzu because we want to know, is this a problem for 90% 的中国人, right? That's our right. No, I mean, I that's the type of thing that we'll often do. And yes, it's not national representative, and that's always a problem.
Yeah.
But you see, that's why we do 10 studies all over China. And if you do 10 studies in Hubei, Sichuan, Shanxi, Hebei, Anhui, Jiangxi, and it's all a problem.
So is it how you just adjust your biases, or is that one area?
That's what we
that
try.
you just study?
Yes,
So-
yeah. And then there are studies like CHNS. CHNS is from Beta.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right.
This
That they work with.
Yeah, it's very useful, this system.
So once we worked with them, and they did the Pinxue, so that was national representative, and we went to our experiment and said, if we give a kid a Wei Seng Su, a vitamin, will it cure it? And of course, Zhao Yubu doesn't care if their Pinxue goes down, they care if their math scores go up. And we showed that if you gave them a vitamin a day, their math scores went up. And so they were very interested. But then they said, we don't like to give medicine to kids. And we'd say, 维生素不是药. But that's why they went to the 营养中餐. That's why they went to the nutritious lunch.
I want to go back to your presentation. I think I also read in your book, you cited many times about this high school attainment of China is around 30% in 2015, which is
34% now.
yes, relatively lower compared to other countries, both OECD countries, but also other middle income countries like Turkey, Philippines, Mexico. But I believe because China is like really fast changing, are you missing something? For example, the generation before 1980s, of course, the high school attainment is very low. Even literacy rate was very low, right? I was born, for example, in 1984. And I know for my generation, the high school attainment was already high. And I go back, for example, some news articles this year, the news article says around 12 million students will graduate from college. So I assume, so they finish high school in 18 years and go to college for 4 years. So those children must be born in 2002. And I looked at it, at that time, there were like 17 million children were born. And this year, 12 million is graduating from college. That would put the college attainment is around 65%. Yes, of course, we have to be fair. Probably some of these students are graduating from master's or PhD. Let's cut around 10%. So it would still put the college attainment around 50%. So the generations are fast changing, as you know, because of history and political changes, cultural revolution. So the generation before 80s have low level of education level. So are we missing something? Are we missing?
It's the other 50%. That's the 50% that we're missing, right?
So if we say,
So as you saw,
Yeah.
I will guarantee you, you go out to any rural, if you go out to any, I mean, as you see from the data, right? You go out to any rural area and so rural is about 60%, rural hukou is about 60 to 65% of the population, right? Half of those are delayed, right? That's a third of the cohort, right? And so what you're saying is that 12 million of the 19 million people that were born in 2000, that 10 million, 10 million went to college, right? Of the 10 million that didn't go, 6 million of them have never studied a day. They are the ones that we need to be worried about. The problem is, what do you do with them now, right? I mean, it's a big problem, right? You have to start. It's Sun Sui Kan Lao. You have to start. You have to get them before 3. So that's what I'm saying is every year we wait, you're creating 1/3 of your population is coming of an age that they won't be able to participate in this high income economy. Okay, we need 10%. 10% of our people we need to do this and be nannies and that kind of stuff, but we don't need 50%.
Yes, but that 50% is college attainment, and I assume for high school it would be even higher. But
the US is 70% college attainment. Our 20% of our who have this social problem has created huge social problems. We have a social volcano, by the way, right? Exactly, and it's about to erupt next November.
But coming back to China again, so of course now we have Chinese. I will get to this also. The Chinese government has various initiatives. As you said, Chinese government already realized this problem and coming up various initiatives, right? Like rural revitalization program, or smart agriculture, digital agriculture, and common prosperity and poverty eradication. So. And also,
So digital application, that people who are cognitively delayed cannot use digital technology to farm their farm. They just don't have the ability to interact with it.
What about if they work in a gig economy, like online delivery, e-commerce, or live streaming? So there's a huge new opportunities, and I was reading last year, I think.
So you think that if 400 million people are, can't do math and can't do science and can't do computers and can't do and can't do language, you think that economy doesn't have a problem?
No, of course,
Okay.
it does have a problem, but I think there are, of course, we can never get to a place that we solve all these problems perfectly 100%, but I think there are some like efforts being carried out.
So
To
Shang
mitigate these
Chun is not mitigating it.
Yeah,
You have to mitigate it when the baby's 6 months old,
yes,
okay? You can't wait until 25.
yes.
Okay, it's too late. You have to start, and guess what? Brazil
Mhm.
has a Ministry of Human Capital.
Yes.
And every single one of its, the lower 40% of the population in income, they not only get parental training,
Mhm.
they pay them to go get parental training.
Mhm.
Because we want to make sure that 100% of our babies are getting the training they need, because for 70 years, this has been our problem. That's who causes Brazil's problem. They're in crime, they're in social unrest, they're unemployed, they have all, that's the problem in Brazil, right? That's the problem in Mexico, that's the problem in Colombia, right? And guess what? As they went from poor to middle income, they didn't have this problem.
So as you said, China was successful at like eliminating or decreasing nutritional in like malnutrition or nutritional deficiency
You bet.
among children, and also the health situation is also improved. So what do you think the biggest reason that many children still have this cognitive development?
Because parents don't understand. Because
Yeah.
because 80% of the parents say, I want to send my kid to college, and then they don't psychostimulate their kid. They have.
Okay. So yeah.
Yeah, many children in the rural areas, the parents moved to
And
cities
grandma.
for work. Yeah, spend their grandma.
Yes, I was also reading about Peidu mothers, the mothers who moved to the townships and near cities to educate their children. And yes, it was a big issue, but I also think it is because Chinese education system emphasizes so much test taking, and Chinese education is so hyper competitive. So one of the reasons they left behind is the students in cities, the elites especially, spend so much money, extra money to their children to get into Beta or Tsinghua, and the whole system becomes a little bit unfair, and then these elites have a built-in advantage. And
So I don't think every rural kid has to go to Beta or Tsinghua, right? We don't need that, right? But we need them to go to high school and to learn math, science, computers, and language. That's what we need. That's what they need to be able to function in a high income economy.
yes. So then what skills can we teach for these children who are already cognitively behind the other children? So what skills would be the most?
So what we need to do, we need two things. So first, we need early childhood development to stop the babies from becoming delayed. Okay, that's number one. But the other two things we need is, I think we need an unemployment insurance for rural people.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
There's no unemployment insurance for rural people now. Okay,
Yes.
so because they're never unemployed.
Yeah.
Right. So the other thing is we need to really start thinking about adult training. But it's going to be hard. Adult training. So when they lose their job, this is for Chongren Jiaoyu.
Right.
And
Germany is really good at.
Germany has a good vocational Zhigao Dazhuan, right?
Yeah.
But guess what they teach in Zhigao? math, science, computers, language. Oh, yeah, and a little bit of a little bit of a skill. In Dajuan, then it's all skill, right? But
Yes.
and so
So, and thank you. And so what makes, I was, again, going back to your book, you talked about these countries who are trapped and couldn't make successful transition from middle income to advanced income economies. You talked about these graduates and those who are trapped. Like you give example of like Israel, South Korea, or Singapore, who's successful in Ireland, made this transition. So what is the most important quality? So you think it is investment in the children and human capital?
yes, I mean, so in the United States and I don't know in Germany, but in Australia, in Great Britain, even in junior high school, they start to teach kids about the importance of nutrition and health, and then raising your kids and all of that. You know, they do sex education and all of that type of thing, right? And so that they already know that this is out there. They don't get taught that in Chinese schools, right? And so parents, like I said, these moms, they say, I want my kid to go to college. And then you start teaching them how to train their baby, how to interact with their baby. Within a month, they get it. I mean, they've all been to junior high. They read and write. So, they get it. And so, I don't see there's any, there's any issue at all with them need to knowing, but it has to start at 0 to 3.
Yes, I have two last questions and then I open the floor to everybody. Now I want to turn the table. So we know this regional inequality, like the divide between rural areas and cities are also prevalent in advanced economy in the West and also in Germany and also in the United States, right? And I want to talk about the United States. So you have observed a lot of what has been happening in China, and we know the inequality also exists in China, in the US. So we know, I have been to the US also. There is like, you have very prosperous metropolitan areas in the two coasts, like New York, San Francisco, LA. But there are also a lot of left behind areas in the middle of the countries, like rural areas, small towns. So, and there is, and I was also reading a news article that said last year around 100,000 people in the US died from drug overdose. Around 50,000 of them are in rural areas or small towns. And their general percentage in the general population is much lower, so it's even higher for them. So it's because of lack of opportunity or desperation or lack of hope, or part of it is also mental health crisis. And we can see the societal and political polarization in the US. So it's like, sometimes it feels like two different countries, right? So my question is, so you observe a lot, you recommended some of your solutions to Chinese policymakers and academics. So what do you think those solutions could be applicable to the US?
Well, people always ask me, why do you work on China and not the US?
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
I mean, yeah, I'm not an expert on the US and probably did. I think there's a couple differences. Is first of all, we're 3 times richer on per capita basis than China.
Yeah.
And we have a very, very large welfare system. So all these guys that are out there that, aren't doing well, is at least they're able to, that they cause problems, they cause crime. But, the United States is still growing at, 2.5% a year. And you know, has a strong economy. So yeah, it's a huge problem in the US.
So do you think some of your solutions can be applied?
Well, in very poor Black neighborhoods and poor Hispanic neighborhoods, there's also a problem of early childhood development there, definitely, but it's a very different problem. It's single mothers, violence in the household, drugs in the household, and that kind of, that's the problem in those households. That's not the problem in Chinese households. I mean, Chinese households don't have that problem.
But did you also notice in China, like the rising divorce rate?
There is a rising impact. In fact,
having the impact on children, or
well, what's very interesting in our project in Western Sichuan, 15% of the it's 13%. 13% of the families are now divorced. 82% of them, the divorce was initiated by the wife. And you say, well, what do you do? Well, I take my baby and I go back to my mom. And my mom is really happy to have me because I'm her only kid, right? And guess what? I can go find another husband because there's 30 million extra men out there. That's what they say. And I can go get a job, right? This was very different than 20 years ago, right? I mean,
yes.
that women, 20 years ago, what women did when they were unhappy is they took a bottle of insecticide and killed themselves, right? The suicide rate of Chinese women were the highest in the world by far. Now it's one of the lowest in the world. It just is turned around because they have more, you know, power, right? And that's going to change in those years. But I mean, I don't think the kids, if the kid stays with the father's family, the kid, their cognition goes down over time. If the kid stays with the mom, their cognition doesn't change. And so we've been following Pang Xiaopeng from Renmin University. I think she's now in Capital University, right? She's writing a paper on this.
And my last question is, as I said many times, so you have done a lot of research, and also there was one anecdote I was impressed with. You said many of your lectures that when you get this friendship with Prime Minister Linda Bao, he said, I went to this many villages. You said, I went to this many villages, and he said, you went to more villages than I.
No.
No,
He didn't.
He said to you.
No, he went to more counties than I have. So yes, exactly. I've been to 856 counties. Baba Ushu so plus or minus, right? Plus or minus. No, but one job out went to more than 1,000. So it's
and then you were successful in some cases that your proposals were taken up by the provincial governments or national government, like National Reform and Development Commission, etc. So here we are at Sino-German Agriculture Center. We are a platform to facilitate agricultural cooperation with Germany. We would also like to make a positive. I believe we already made a lot, but we want to make more contributions. So, and also our other participants have the same desire. So, what do you think is because we look up to you, what do you think the secret to that your academic solutions in rural development can be taken up or taken seriously by policymakers in China, so some of it can be implemented or integrated into their decision making? Can you share?
Sure. I mean, I think it's working with RCRE and working with Beida and working with Zhongnongda, right? But I think it's, you know, the other difference between China and the US. Well, first of all, it's, well, you got to find the right question, right? Of what they're interested. But the other thing to do is Chinese leaders are much smarter than American leaders. I mean, I'm serious. And they do respond to you. And so what our hypothesis is that we go get data. And we don't have I don't want to tell them my opinion, right? Everything that I told you today is data, right? And, that's what, when we went to Liu Yandong and said, CHNS shows that 45% of kids in China have anemia. And look, if you do this, you get rid of anemia. She spent $5 billion and started the biggest nutrition lunch program in the world, right? And so, that's what we've done. And then provincial leaders and county leaders, they do the same thing, right? They have to balance their budget and put their priorities right, but it's asking the right question and giving data that shows that it's.
And maybe turning your academic studies to something which they can understand, the language they can understand.
Sure, policy briefs.
Thank you very much. So now I open the floor to our wonderful participant. Let's go for the questions. Yes. Questions or comments?
All right, I've got the opportunity because I forgot it later. I don't have the chance. So thank you so much, Professor. I am so lucky to be here today because as a mom of 2 babies, I know it's very important.
How old are your babies?
One is 3 years, the other is 5.
Oh, so 3, jayo.
Yes. So actually,
I'm sure you've done
from my
that.
own experience, I know that we should put the input, right, for the early childhood development, like the first child, because they always take like the majority of the attention of the resources of the family. So of course, like the birth order matters. So we naturally, we see, if you notice not, we put more majority, the resources to the first baby,
Yep.
no matter it's a girl or a boy, right?
Yep.
So the second one and the third, maybe for the rest of
Lost.
them. Exactly. So that reminded me, okay, I should put more for my baby number 2. Yes, that's the first lesson. The second one, because I'm so lucky to be here, is that I also by accident did like the early childhood development research. But my perspective is from like who looks after the babies. Like we use the data from the CFPS, the Peking University, because I don't have the money like you. We don't have the time consuming and fund consuming to collect the data to do the experiment. We have to use the Peking.
Rich Stanford alumni.
Yes, so that fund us, we fund the parental care is the most important, it's the best in regarding of like the age of counting, the age of counting numbers, like working independently, the toilet training, and also like speaking the words. So we use that for perspectives, and we found the parental care is much better than the grandparents' care and the nursery care, and also we see like the third party or babysitters care. So that's why, regarding to your research, there's you let the parents, right? Most times, the young mothers to give them resources and methods, and most important to let them recognize it's important for the whole family's future. It's not just because their husband working in the cities, but for the future of the family, for the next generation, it's more important to read books, play the toys with the children. Yeah. So
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's very illustrating.
Yeah. I'm number 2. And my older brother is much smarter than me. And in fact,
Typically, but
we've seen in our data. So if you go get 1,000 rural moms, who have babies, about 600 of them have 1 baby, and 400 of them have 2 babies. Almost 0 have 3 babies. They don't want 3 babies. They even no, maybe 5% of them or 4% of them have 3 babies. And of the 600 that have 1 baby, about half of them will have a second baby. So it's about that there's about 30% of them that are only gonna have one kid, and about 70% of them have two kids, right? And the first kid always has a higher need than the second kid.
Yeah,
Okay, number one girl
yeah.
is higher than the number one boy. So, and there's very, very little Zhongnan Qingyu that you even observe anymore, except with grandma, with the second baby,
Mhm.
who's a boy. So, then she spends a lot more time with them. There, I know, so you still see that coming up,
Yeah.
but moms now say that they're very happy. If a mom has two girls, almost none of them want a third baby. Two girls, it's great. You know, 平均现在很便宜, right? 平均很贵, right? Yeah. So, no, I think that it's very, very important. And rural is very different than urban,
Mhm.
because in rural, every mom while she's there is a full-time mom. I mean, she doesn't do anything else. She's a full-time mom. And so that makes it very different than the US, right? Where people are working and you need daycare, and that makes it very complicated. But,
Yeah.
and so, and all moms have been to junior high, so, you know, they read and write, and so.
Yeah, so it's times that it would be possible, like the rural families will catch up with the urbans, because
You see.
the urban moms, they work home.
Yeah, but you know what they've done a lot of work in the US. We haven't done it. We haven't worked with urban moms. But if you spend time with your baby in the morning and they're in a good daycare, and then you spend time with your baby at night, those babies are perfectly normal. I mean, they're perfectly normal. You don't have to be with your baby for all 6 hours. If you're with your baby for a lot, it's good, right? But if you're not with your baby, you don't have to stimulate your baby 16 hours a day.
Mhm.
That's called a tiger mom.
Thank you.
Yeah, Professor, when I first saw the announcement of your talk, I was excited for the opportunity to participate, and I was also reminded strongly of this podcast I heard 2 years ago with Bill Michaelis. I'm sure you're familiar with him and his work, and today
Being at UNICEF, right?
yeah, with the UN. And today, listening to you, I have a strong sense of déjà vu because of how much overlap your emphasis is with his view. He had a report on the China's poverty alleviation effort end of 2021 coming out at the same time when you had your last book on the Invisible China. So, and you will also talk a lot about the 0 to 3 education and how the rural moms, even though they love their children very much, they just don't know what the scientific thing to do is.
Right.
One thing I'm missing from your talk is he also talked a lot about the Hukou system and the systematic discriminatory effect it has on rural population. And so you started your talk about the systematic disparities, but you didn't go into the Hukou system specifically. I'm sure it's not because you are records. So maybe do you have an opinion on how big a factor that is, in particular on the children, because of course it affects the children as well. And another factor, our work in rural China has been related to is the environmental factor. We've been working with the Sichuan Provincial Academy for Environmental Science on waste management, for example, for decades, and we know a little bit how bad it can get in rural China, and pollution of water and soil. It disproportionately affects the children, of course, also, and some of the children are systematically poisoned since early childhood, and we know that there is a big effort to clean up the rural environment. Is there any data already to show any effect of this kind of?
Yeah, so we haven't done any with the environment, but I agree. So, let me just talk about the hukou system. You know, I'm an economist, right? So, you know, Japan has 40 million people? 120, yeah, 125, got it. 70 million people live in one city. It's a big city. It's from Tokyo to Osaka, Kyoto to Hiroshima, right? I mean, over 2/3 of the population. In the United States, we have, you know, 300 million people. 200 million people live in two big cities. One city is Boston to Washington, and the other is Los Angeles to San Francisco, right? Huge urbanization. I think China should have one big city with Bayiren from Shenyang to Hangzhou. Or now it's not going to happen. Okay, so and I know that. But I think that one thing that's happening really good now, and you talked about it, is people moving to towns and county seats. If you saw those 10 randomized trials, every one of them was in Nongchun. Nobody's ever done it in the Xinjiang or never done it in Zhenjiang, right? And remember, we used to leave out those villages, right? And but now, so I think that's good. I think
There has been a relaxation in hukou.
sure, and because of that, and there's three reasons why, right? Is
Rapid decline.
there's a whole bunch of empty schools and they don't want to lay off their teachers.
Right.
So let's have, and they want people to come and rent their property, right? Or buy it, right? And it's very different. I think that's good because I think for the families, it's really good if they live in the Xinjiang for education, for health. I think that's very good. I worry about I worry about 20 years from now. What do those families do? There's no manufacturing. There's construction now, but there won't be construction 20 years from now. And if there's no poverty in China, no poverty, but there's Ru, right?
Yeah.
Remember, 9亿人是块美元一个月一天之下, right? It's less than
World Bank standard.
right, World Bank standard. So that's low income, right? And low income people don't consume services. So what are they going to do 20 years from now? But I think it's good for now. I think that we have a problem we're going to have to challenge 20 years from now. I think it's very, very good. I think then they get the kids out of those areas with bad water, you know, the big, as Home knows from some of our projects, the worst thing in the world when Fuqi Liangren get married in a factory. She's from Heilongjiang and he's from Shanxi. She does not want to go live in the village, you know, 我听不懂, you know, 陕西话, you know, exactly. And so she loves to live in the county seat, right? And so I think this is that's a relaxing of the hukou. I think we need to relax it even more. So
I think it is relaxed even more in more like second tier cities and provinces. Of course, Beijing, Shanghai is still very strict. So I read like, for example, now in Zhejiang or Jiangsu, as long as you have some kind of job contract or rental contract, you can change your hukou residence to those cities. But of course, Beijing, Shanghai is the strictest, and there are like 40–50% of the population live in Beijing, doesn't have Beijing hukou. And for them to have children and get their children educated is a big issue.
I think there are many questions in the room, but I have a feeling that people online might be dropping out because we are a little bit running over time. I hope that's okay for the people in the room. But for online people, I would like to bring up, I have a few questions here and perhaps we can bring them up first.
try to be quick.
And try to be quick. Now, it's both short and not very long question. I'll make them both short. The first one is, which relevant ways of generating income do you see currently for rural people with a poor education? What do these people do now? And the second question is, I think it's a little bit this involution question. How, what's going to happen if in China's educational system, everybody is pushing for the best education possible? What kind of systematic change do you need for that system if everybody is trying to put their kids into
College.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, if you go to South Korea or Taiwan or Ireland or Israel or the United States or Germany, I don't know, I'm not gonna say Germany, up right there, is everyone goes to college. Okay? Everyone goes to college, 102%. Of Korean, in other words, that people who are adults are coming back to college now. So, and it's a big, great problem to have. It's the best problem to get. Yeah, there are problems, right? Because people don't want, who have a college degree, don't want to be a waiter or a cook in a restaurant, right? But it's better than it's better than them not having a job at all, or not being able to go to high school, or not being able to college. You'd rather be in South Korea than.
What about fertility rate drops? Everybody go to college and nobody wants to have children.
Well, so yeah, that's, I mean, that's obviously a problem. You know, we solve it by immigration.
Yes,
Right.
US, of
And
course.
yes, and Germany's done quite a bit of immigration, but
Yeah.
you know, not as much as the US. So you know, that's an issue. That, you know, there's a theory that says we're headed to the post-industrial society. And we don't need to have that many people, right? And but in a post-industrial society, everybody needs to know. I mean, to do housework, you need to know computers and math. To run your Chat GPT robot, right? And I'm serious about that, right? So I don't think there are lots of problems when you overeducate your population, but they're good problems to have, and it's exactly the opposite problem of poorly educated societies. Because you know, then what happens with poorly educated societies is you know, you become Mexico. Right, which was one of the most safest countries in the world in 1980. And it was one of the safest countries in the world, and now it's one of the most violent countries in the world because 50% of their population couldn't get a job in a high income economy, right? And of those 50% of the people that couldn't get a job in a high income economy, 33% of them went to the US. Chinese aren't going to be able to do that. 33% of them went to work for the gig economy, right? They flipped pancakes, and 33% of them went into crime, right? And so, I mean, that's the kind of thing that that's in your. What's the first question?
First one, how to generate income now for you?
Yeah, so it's really, it's very, very hard. That's why I think that, you know, that there's still lots. China is not a high income economy yet. It's still a middle income country, and there are jobs that for poorly educated people in the gig economy, right, and everything like that. But it's going to become a bigger and bigger issue, and I think that's why China needs to work on unemployment insurance and retraining. And it's going to be hard to retrain if they have poor cognitive skills. But you have to try, and many people you can retrain. Some you won't be able to, but many you can. So I think that those are the kinds of things that China needs to think about doing.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
Well, my question is about the numbers and the quality of the farmers in China. So I heard a lot of numbers. There are like 500 million 农村户口, and we have like
It's almost 800, 750.
I'm not sure about that.
750.
And we have like 260 farmers, right? I'm not sure. And someone said it's 160.
160 million
farmers. Yeah. So, do you have more knowledge or more information about that? Or let's say by 2050, how many farmers do we need for this country. Or what kind of farmer would we need?
Yeah, so I'm going to tell you what Home boss Huang Ji-kun,
Yeah,
what his thing is what we have to go towards
yeah,
is we need a professional class of farmers.
Yeah.
Who are going to farm 100 to 200 lu
okay.
of land that can then generate an income that will be roughly equivalent to a gig economy job, right, off of there. And what do you say that you needed to 10 million farmers, something like that, not 160 million, right? And you know, some of the older farmers that I think we need to move towards that system, right?
Okay.
But that means, it doesn't mean Nongchun Zhenji, right? It means moving them to the city, moving the families to the city, integrating them into the city life. And so now there's lots of challenges. You asked Huang Ji-kun how you move to a system of 10 million people having 200 new farms. It's a tough thing, well, especially with property rights, right? Yeah, who owns the property, right? China is a very special system in the world, right? GT, 所有制
Yeah,
is
Land was not actually owned by.
you better believe it. I think there's no other country in the world except Bei Chaoxian, who has the same system as China. And so that's a big challenge.
Yeah, well, I was actually asking about the trend. I know that there will be less farmers maybe in the rural area in the future, but.
So right now, the average age farmer is 58-year-old, 59-year-old men.
Yeah.
And about 45 to 50-year-old women. Okay, so middle-aged women and older men. And everybody says, is that a problem? Well, the average age of farmer in Japan is 79. So China has 20 years to deal with this problem. I mean, you know, China is highly mechanized now, right? I mean, with custom plowing and custom planting and custom harvesting, and so you know that gives a lot of flexibility, you know, to the system, and it's fairly market driven. We like markets as economists, right? So I think it's a big issue. I mean, I think you're asking exactly the right question. I think we need to ask Huang Ji-kun.
Thank you for talking this morning in the Ministry of
Agriculture.
Yes, by estimation, by 2050, around 3000万 were working on farming.
Okay.
Yeah, and 10 million are really big, and 20 million are medium sized. It depends where, right? Yeah. So
3000万还要减少很多。
yeah.
It's 130.
I think you
Good
could
question.
lecture.
Oh, yes, sure, yes.
Jürgen, are you on? Yes.
Good.
Yeah, first of all, a big thank you. It was very inspiring. Just a very simple question, actually. At the beginning of your presentation, the question was, why are you poor? What was the definition of poor? Was it a self-perception then of that person? I only have 2 houses and just a small car. I'm not really rich. Or how was that? How was that selected, so to say? When did people regard themselves as poor? I've also found it interesting that they compare themselves more with what they have been before and not necessarily with rich people. So maybe just this as a short question. And then a second question, if I may, is which of the levels, administrative levels, which you certainly communicated with all the statistics, etc., did you find most responsive? Was it the central level, or was it more provincial or local levels with whom you communicated? Which reacted most responsive?
The second question first is, you know, China, much more than the US, the upper level leaders have always had a communication dialogue with academics. And so they've historically been quite responsive. I don't go see them. I mean, Professor E and Professor Huang and Song Hong-Yuan and that these guys, we do research together, then they take the research results up to them. But local governments used to really try to create sort of new breakthroughs, and then they would run up to the provincial government and show off, and then the provincial government would run to the national government and try to convince them to come and check it out. There's a little less of that now. There's a but that local magistrates in counties and local especially counties, that's the one I see face to face. They're still very interested. They're very smart. They ask, they're very interested in what you're doing. And once they figure out you're not trying to cheat them, and you're actually giving them, giving them glasses or giving their kids meals or giving their parents, early childhood development training, they become very, very collaborative with you. So it's China now. And this is how bad my memory. The first question is,
What's for?
oh, what's for? Oh, okay, so yeah, there's actually, why are you middle income? And I didn't, so basically what they did is they before they started, they did a survey form and they asked them about their incomes and everything. And poor was about $10 US per day or less. So it was low income. And rich was I don't know what the exact definition of rich was, but they took the sample, which was a national representative sample, and divided into terciles, and it was the bottom tercile was poor and the top rich tercile. Every once in a while, Marty would reach someone and say, "Why are you poor?" And they say, "I'm not poor." So China's the opposite. So no, good question. I think it's why aren't you rich is probably what they're really asking.
All right, thank you.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
Yes, you're thank you.
Just to confirm,
When you come here, we'll come back and see you when you're back here.
I hope so. Yeah, how long are you going to stay in Beijing this time?
I'll be about 3 months here, so I'm teaching.
Well, yeah, good. So I'll be back in Beijing next week. So let's get in touch. Thank you.
Good. Okay.
And more question.
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
But I'm just trying to understand this. You talked about new productive forces. So part of that is because China doesn't have enough labor to work in the farms. The people are the farm age is pretty old. So they want to introduce mechanization and automation to solve that labor problem. But in the long term, we might not have enough labor to work on this highly technical machines because they're not getting the sufficient education they need. Is that what you're getting?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, even not just on the farm, but off the farm. I mean, like she was saying, we hope over the next 20 years, 200 million people move to the cities and get jobs in the cities. We don't want 160 million farms or 260. Those numbers are beyond me, right? So we want, I think every developing country, most of the people live and work, in manufacturing, construction or service sector, right? Not agriculture. So, I think, so I think it's what those people do when they get to the city is what we're really most interested in. Just, again, I think the problem with China is you don't realize in a high income economy how little pure labor there is. There's just, if you go to a construction site in the US, there's 5 people working on it. And now it takes a long time to build stuff, okay? But everything is mechanized and everything, I mean, and now it's computerized and everything is, and you know, to just put a brick on there, you have to run it through your, you know, you run it through. Now, you know, is that the most efficient? It's because labor is so expensive, right? And because laborers make, you know, $80,000 US a year, right? And you're in California, you're poor. If you have $80,000 US a year, you're poor or you're low income. So you see what I'm saying is that's what happened. Now, you do need some pure laborers, right? I mean, people still mow the lawn, right? And people still, you know, do that kind of stuff, but it's 10%, 15% of your labor force, not 50% of your labor force. And if 50% of your labor force is trying to get the jobs of 15% of the jobs, what happens is the income in those things go way down and people get laid off and you know, what you worry about, what happens in the US and Mexico and Brazil is you start having crime and you start having social problems, and then people don't want to invest. And then, yeah, right, and so hopefully there's enough surveillance in China that we don't have that problem, right? And yeah, good question. It's exactly the right question.
Do we have more questions? Yeah.
I'm very happy to be here to you give us a very interesting research report. It's very in our center we do the research almost focusing on the agricultural industry, not social area, but rural social area. And nutrition is a big concern for children, not only in the rural area, but also in the urban area for all the children. Because in 2019, I took my daughter in the United States for almost 1 year, and about I remember about in 2018 the new agricultural law maybe implemented by the Trump, maybe, and the big part, a very big part. I can't remember the exactly data, and the big part is nutrition about the new agricultural law. Yeah, but in China, yes, in our government we haven't. We don't pay much attention for the nutrition for the rural people. Every year we will do many budget for the agricultural industry development. That's not many budget for the nutrition area. I think it's a big problem. We should pay more attention, and in our fixed rural survey system, we should to do some investigation about the nutrition in rural area. Yes, is a very, very important. And you said the labor force, and at present we do a big, very important project. 农业强国 powerhouse, agricultural powerhouse, and at present, lack of the labor force is a very important problem in rural areas. Maybe we said in 2050s we should realize the aim to build the agricultural powerhouse, but who will build the powerhouse? We should lack of many labor force, and I think is also this topic. At present, we do this research, and is a very, very important research point to put. Yeah, sure. Yeah, 谁去建设农业强国？ Yeah.
Well, that was kind of what we were looking at before, is how do you go from 160 million to 30 or 10 million, right? You know, property rights are a big problem, right? And, you know, how do you get somebody 200亩 in, it's easy in Heilongjiang, but try to do it in, you know, Baoding or Shanghai or Suzhou, right? It's really, so, and that's the problem, is that because the area is so small, nobody wants to do it, right? I mean, you know, today my taxi driver come over here and says, he's from Niyuan, yeah, from Niyuan, he says, no one plants, we rent out all of our land to Hebei Nomi, right? And because你吃不饱饭, if you just, so that's your big problem. About understanding education, so we found out that a lot of babies had nutrition problems. Okay, this is about in early 2014 年, okay, and so we said, you know, why, you know, what they do is they give their babies formula. They get knife on.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, exactly. Knife on, and don't start giving them complementary feeding until they're 1 or 12, 13, 14 months, which is, you know, and so we gave them a test. I'm a culture. Do they understand baby nutrition? And then we gave them a test on do they understand Yangzhu nutrition? And they scored 8.2 on the, out of 10 on the pig nutrition, and they scored 4.6 on the baby nutrition. They knew more about how to raise a pig than how to raise a baby. And because the Nongye Tuiguangzhan teaches them about raising pigs, but no one teaches them. That's what I said. There's no classes in school. No one, you know who teaches them about nutrition? My knife on the Tuixiao, right? So he said, look at this, has all the nutrition you need. Don't give your baby any food, right? Wait till they're 1 year old, then and of course it's that babies need complementary food at 6 months, right? So yeah, it's it's good. It's very, these are, yes, let's do nutrition study.
I talked to your school, and I think for those children, I think they earn the nutrition for their middle school meal. Yeah, and she always come home.
Oh, so that.
Yeah, but
For my kids, but that's because they're growing kids.
why you don't eat your food in school? Because 太难吃了。Yeah.
Yes, we can. We can.
Yeah.
Over nutritious dinner.
So thank you very much. This is we have an online survey, so to evaluate our events, so to get feedbacks and improve in the future. This is the QR code I'm sharing with both on-site participants and online participants right now. And I hope you will do that. It takes just 3 seconds to scan and be along 9 questions. So. Yes.
Don't want me to answer my own? It was great. I actually learned a lot. I mean,
And now.
I like to hear what you guys say.
Yes. It has been such a very interesting and stimulating 2 hours, and we have learned a lot. I can speak for myself. I learned a lot. And thank you for spending such valuable time of yours today. And yeah, I hope we continue with this conversation and dialogue and exchange and make more impact in the future. So I also thank our online participants to be very patient and listening to us, and thank you very much.